All right, let's pull back the curtain on something most people never see, the hidden world of corporate investigations. This is a place where the line between trust and betrayal can get really, really blurry.
I mean, just think about that for a second. What if the biggest threat to a company isn't some hacker halfway across the world, but the person you trust sitting right there in the next cubicle? It's a chilling thought, right? So let's explore how investigators tackle this exact problem.
To figure out how to catch someone who's stealing from the inside, you first have to get inside their head. Why on earth would a trusted, good employee risk everything? Well, it pretty much all comes down to psychology.
This specific crime we're talking about here is called embezzlement. And look, this isn't a random break-in or a smash and grab. This is different. This is a deep violation of trust committed by an insider, someone who is given the keys to the castle. So how does a good person even get to that breaking point? Well, security professionals use this really powerful model to understand that mindset. It's called the fraud triangle. And the idea is pretty simple. For a trusted person to steal, you almost always need these three things to be present at the same time. First up, there's pressure. This is the why, the motive. It's almost always a financial crisis that feels completely unsolvable, you know? The kind of thing that keeps you staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m.? A huge debt, a medical emergency, a job loss in the family. It's just this powerful, desperate feeling. Second, you need opportunity. This is basically a weakness in the system. It's the belief that they can do it without getting caught. Maybe the oversight is a little loose, or the internal controls just aren't really there. It's basically a wide open door. And finally, the third piece of the puzzle, rationalization. This is the story the person tells themselves to make it all okay. They're not a bad person, you see. They're just borrowing it. Or maybe they feel underpaid, or they think, hey, this company is so huge, they'll never even notice.
And this right here is the absolute most crucial insight for any company. Think about it. You can't control an employee's personal pressures, and you certainly can't control how they rationalize their actions inside their own head. The only thing you have direct power over is the opportunity. And that's exactly why all prevention efforts are focused right there.
Okay, so closing off opportunity is all about prevention. But what about detection? What if fraud is already happening? Well, it usually leaves these subtle little behavioral traces. And investigators are trained to spot these red flags, often long before anyone even confirms that money is missing.
These are the big three. A sudden, lavish lifestyle is probably the most obvious, but refusing to take a vacation? Now that's an interesting one. It's often because they absolutely cannot let anyone else do their job for fear that their replacement will stumble onto the scheme. The same goes for being super territorial about financial records.
And here's what that disconnect looks like in the real world. You've got someone making $40,000 a year, but they're pulling into the company parking lot in a brand new Porsche. That's not just office gossip. In the world of corporate security, that is a giant flashing red light that says something is very, very wrong here.
So what happens when those red flags point to a much, much bigger problem, like maybe a massive internal theft ring? That's when investigators have to consider a strategy that's very high risk, but also very high reward.
We are talking about undercover operations. Now, this isn't something you do because a box of pens went missing. This is a tool you reserve for really serious systemic problems where you need to get an inside source to understand the full scope of what's going on.
And this is where things get incredibly tricky. It's like walking a legal tightrope. There is a huge legal risk here because the goal is to uncover criminal activity that's already happening, not to convince someone to commit a crime they wouldn't have otherwise. If you cross that line, it's called entrapment, and it can completely destroy your entire case. So how do you manage that risk? With ironclad professional rules. You never use your own employees or guards. They'd be recognized in a second. You bring in a specialized agency. That undercover agent has a handler they check in with every single day for safety. And you absolutely must have an exit plan before the operation even begins. There is zero room for improvisation here.
So you've gathered the evidence, but the job is far from over. Now comes the real test, building a case that is so solid it can withstand the intense pressure of the legal system.
It all really comes down to the final report. And this document has to be a fortress of facts with absolutely no holes. It has to methodically answer every single one of those questions: who, what, when, where, why, and how. Because you can bet that any tiny crack will be exploited in court. And the language in that report must be completely objective. An investigator's opinions are worthless in court. I think he's guilty will get thrown out immediately. But he admitted to taking the box. That is a fact.
That is evidence. That distinction is absolutely everything. Ultimately, all of this work, the surveillance, the interviews, that fortress of a report, it all comes down to the investigators sitting on the witness stand. A skilled lawyer will do everything they possibly can to discredit them and, by extension, the entire investigation.
But professionals are trained for this. They listen to the entire question before speaking. They pause before they answer, which also gives their own lawyer time to object. They know that "I don't recall" is a perfectly valid answer because guessing can absolutely destroy your credibility. And above all, you never ever letting an opposing attorney make you angry or emotional on the stand.
And that brings us right back to where we started. This entire field is built on a pretty uncomfortable truth. While we all want to trust people, the only factor we can truly control is their opportunity. It's this constant balancing act between assuming the best in people and preparing for the worst. It really makes you think about the nature of trust in any workplace, doesn't it?